Today, we are going to walk through the part of the Samantha Murphy case that most people think they understand, but almost no one has actually broken down properly. The first 72 hours. Because these hours, more than any other, define what police believe, what they prioritize, and what they abandon. And when you reconstruct those hours using confirmed public information, interviews, statements, and the visible moves made by investigators, a pattern starts forming. A pattern that raises new questions about where the investigation focused its early attention and where it may have already drifted off course. Let's start at the only point everyone agrees on. Sunday morning, 4th of February 2024, around 7 o'clock, Samantha leaves her home in Eureka Street for a run. It is something she does often. She knows the terrain. She follows routes she has used before. She is predictable in her habits. That predictability matters because when a predictable person breaks their pattern, investigators look for the reason. By late morning, she has not returned home. No message, no call, no sign of her on the usual paths. And at that point, the concern becomes formal. Police are notified. A missing person report is filed. This is where the timeline begins to compress. From the moment police step in, the early assumption shapes every decision. This is a missing runner, not a criminal case. That assumption matters more than most people realize because it determines where resources go, which locations are prioritized, and what kind of evidence is considered valuable. Within the first hours, police search the bushland around Ballarat East, focusing on the tracks Samantha typically used. SES volunteers join. Drones are deployed. Ground teams sweep the most accessible areas of Wuwukurrung Regional Park. These are standard procedures for a missing person scenario. But standard is not always optimal. In a case like this, the last confirmed sighting is everything. And Samantha's last confirmed location is not a bush track, it is her home. After that, there is nothing verifiable. This is the first critical point in the timeline. A search that begins without a confirmed second location is a search that is already partially blind. And yet, the operation expands outward anyway. That is not necessarily a mistake, but it does show that the working theory at this stage is a natural disappearance, not interference. Meanwhile, her phone connects with a tower near Buninyong, and this detail has caused more confusion than almost anything else in the case. People imagine that a phone connecting to a tower means the phone was physically right next to it, like a pin on a map. But that is not how mobile networks work. A single tower ping confirms only one thing, that the phone interacted with that tower at a moment in time. It does not confirm the exact position, it does not provide GPS accuracy, and it certainly does not indicate a specific direction of travel. A phone can connect to a tower several kilometers away, depending on signal strength, terrain, congestion, and even weather. In some cases, a phone will reach for a stronger, farther tower if the closer one is overloaded or blocked by the landscape. And the Buninyong area has hills, ridges, and coverage variations that make tower connections even harder to interpret. So why is the Buninyong ping important? Not because it tells us exactly where the phone was, but because it introduces a new possibility into the timeline. Movement. Movement away from the Ballarat East running tracks. Movement south, or at least southward in terms of tower reach. And once movement becomes part of the model, investigators must re-evaluate the entire search strategy. This leads to the bigger question. When did police internally shift their attention away from the idea that Samantha collapsed somewhere near home and toward the idea that the phone may have traveled beyond the immediate running area? The answer is not public, but what we can see is the visible shift in search zones during the early days. The operation gradually extended south toward Buninyong and Enfield. That shift did not happen randomly. It appears when new information, like a tower interaction, forces investigators to consider that the initial framework may no longer fit the data. The important thing to understand is this: the Buninyong ping did not provide certainty, it provided doubt. And doubt is what reshapes investigations. Now look at Monday, day 2. The search expands dramatically. SES volunteers, police on foot, mounted units, drones, dog teams. The effort is enormous. But effort does not equal precision. The terrain is mixed. Some parts open, some dense, some with fire trails, others with unmarked tracks. The more you expand, the harder it becomes to detect the small things. A footprint, a disturbed patch of soil, a broken branch. These are fragile clues. In bushland, they disappear quickly. And once the area is crossed by multiple teams, what was evidence becomes noise. This is the second critical point in the timeline. Day 2 should be the day when the search tightens around the highest probability zone. Instead, it widens. Again, not because police acted incorrectly, but because the working theory demanded it. If Samantha collapsed, got injured, or became disoriented, she could be anywhere within a rough radius. Search and rescue doctrine supports widening under those conditions. But those same doctrines can become counterproductive if the disappearance is not natural. By Tuesday, day 3, the search intensifies further. Media coverage increases, community volunteers arrive, more drones, more dogs, more foot patrols. And yet, the results remain the same. No clothing, no personal items, no confirmed track marks, no witnesses seeing her on the run. No sign of a fall, an injury, or an animal incident. Nothing, not even degraded clues. This is the moment when the public sees the search growing but the evidence shrinking. And somewhere inside police headquarters, the reality must have begun to settle. The timeline was no longer behaving like a missing runner case. In those cases, something is always found by day 3. A dropped item, a print, a direction. A hillside mark, a sign of distress, a path taken or attempted. Here, the silence of the landscape was the loudest signal. Yet police still did not publicly declare suspicion. The language remained cautious. They were not misleading the public. They were following protocol. But protocol sometimes hides the truth that investigators themselves are sensing. If the first 72 hours yield nothing, the probability of a natural disappearance collapses. And in the Samantha Murphy case, that collapse happened quietly, behind the scenes, long before it was spoken aloud. To understand the timeline, you must understand the absence. Absence is not a void. It is data. And in the first 3 days of this case, every missing clue became a clue in itself. That is why the search shifted south. That is why the tone changed in later days. And that is ultimately why the case transformed into a homicide investigation. So here is the question for you. Looking at the first 72 hours, what stands out to you the most? Is it the scale of the search? The lack of evidence? The shift toward Buninyong, or the early assumption that this was not suspicious? Tell me what you see when you examine this timeline. Do you think the signs of foul play were present from day 1? Or do you think something subtle emerged later that changed everything? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you are following this series, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. We are going to dig even deeper into the movements around Buninyong, the search patterns in Enfield, and the digital evidence that may have shaped the investigation. I'll see you tonight at the usual time.